All right, I'm going to go ahead and start. Um, the last time we got started with a discussion about computing innovations, and the takeaways that I wanted you to have from that are: number one, what is a computing innovation? Number two, if we're thinking about a computing innovation, what kind of positive effects does it have, as well as what kind of negative effects does it have? Almost everything has both positive and negative. Every once in a while. Hello? Every once in a while you find somebody that has only one kind, right? It's very rare. Let's see. I'm trying to find who's on. That way I can mute it. All right. So what let's see, we had that. And then we also did something important, which is to try to find kind of a deeper impact on a group of people. And what we wanted to do was connect the dots between this is what the software actually does, right? And because it does that, then this happens. And because that happens, here's a group that is affected in kind of a major way. And that's the way that we try to think of big societal impact. So, for example, tablet readers, right? On the one hand, they might make it easier to be able to carry books around, right? So we can have like all the textbooks on a tablet instead of having to carry, the chemistry book and the calculus book and the physics book. You put those three together in a backpack, and you just don't want to carry that backpack. So that would be kind of a positive effect. Kind of a negative effect is that it might be harder to. Oh yeah, sorry, Joel, you got that backpack, huh? But it makes it just a little bit more difficult, for example, to have notes, right? I don't actually agree with that, but it doesn't matter, right? Maybe we could make that case. And so then kind of a side effect, or I guess a deeper impact, might be that because you're not carrying all those things, even though that's not the intended use of the system, right? But just simply because of a side effect that you don't have to carry those heavy backpacks, maybe you will find that certainly true for college students. I think also true for high school students. Maybe you'll have fewer back injuries, simply because people that are carrying around all those things, might develop problems with their lower backs. So that would be kind of a broader societal impact than just affecting the one person who uses it. That actually is something we can all learn. So anyway, that's what I want us to be able to do about many computing innovations. And that's why I ask you to read those pages from the book. I ask you to do that by next week so that we can tackle those. And what I'll actually do is I'll talk to you and ask you to tell me about some of those, one of those, I should say, computing innovations. And then I'll ask somebody else, and he or she can tell me about a different computing innovation, and so on. Okay. Now, last time when we were doing this, we also, there was kind of a request to talk about net neutrality. And I didn't have the time last time, but what I thought was, let's talk about it today, kind of in the vein of a computing innovation, okay? So the first thing that I want to do is ask you, is it a computing innovation? What do you think? Net neutrality. Max says no. How come? Jackson says yes. Awesome. I like that debate. I want it. Enter the ring. We need to follow up on those. And you can unmute yourself if you want, I believe. That's what I meant anyway. Yeah. So. Okay, you think of it as an expansion as opposed to an innovation. It's not something that adds to the technology. It is something that restricts it. Interesting. I'll ask you to follow up on that. More of a social issue than a computing innovation. Okay. And just is not an innovation. All right. I want, Max and Joel to follow up on that. Okay. Because, okay, Jackson also agrees it's a social innovation. Okay. Um, that's something that I want to see is why do you think it's social as opposed to computing? I assume that's what you mean, right? Social as opposed to computing. I want to know why. It's more of a rule than an innovation. Okay. All right. Um, and I kind of like the idea that it restricts it. Is that what you mean by a rule? Right? Something that restricts how we use it? Okay. So who can give me a summary of exactly what net neutrality is? I just want to know what you think. Oh, a political conflict even. Very true, Hayden. Very true. It's a loaded term is what it is. Um, okay, so here's kind of a definition from Jackson. He says, no one company can control the net, whether by throttling speeds to certain sites that they don't own or in other ways. I think that's part of it. I don't quite think it's all of it. In particular, what if one company doesn't do it, but three or four of them get together and do it between them? Would that be okay? Okay. Here's another shot. It says net neutrality ensures internet service providers treat all data equally. So it can't prioritize YouTube data over Netflix data, for example. Okay. Um, Another idea is that any ISP or something similar on a large scale has to treat all data the exact same. Effectively means that ISPs can't give priority to specific data. Okay, that so Joel's statements seem to fit really nicely with Hunter's. Okay, they both seem to be going at the same thing. Um, uh, the Or charge for different type of data charges and money. Okay. Yeah, that's all parts of it. Okay, so I actually I want to say I'm surprised. I mean, people that I talk to, college students, other faculty members, sometimes don't really know what net neutrality really is, although everybody thinks they understand what it is. And what I'm hearing from you guys is actually pretty spot on. What people who use the phrase mean by it is that. A service provider, it could be an ISP or it could be somebody that does other internet services, uh, simply can't say, oh, I like Disney, so I'm going to give Disney priority over somebody I don't like HBO. Okay, that's pretty much what it boils down to. Okay, so what are your feelings on that? The We said that it's not a computing innovation. I agree with that. I think you're spot on. It is a policy, right? No computers got better. No software got better because of net neutrality or not net neutrality, right? It is simply a decision that we make regarding how we want to use the internet. So it's not a computing innovation, so it doesn't count in that sense. But I still want to run with it. So who can tell me what kind of positive effects they feel net neutrality has, or what kind of negative effects they feel net neutrality has? And we should be able to find that. Okay. So let's break it down. Who has a positive effect? Okay, so service providers can't restrict websites of their competitors. Okay. Okay, so we're treating that as a positive effect, right? I was wondering where everyone was. We got new computers. Awesome. Yay. Well, thanks for letting me know. Okay. And as I wish I got a new computer too, but that's just not happening. I'm annoyed. Okay, I'm over it. The what I want to see is as people joining, we're discussing net neutrality, and we're thinking in terms of positive effects. So what else? What else do we have? More favorable for cable companies, but can have drawbacks for the average consumer. Okay, Dylan, I'm gonna ask you to elaborate on that. Okay, let me read Jacobs here. Okay, so this is not your opinion, but something you've heard is that it will really not be neutral and will limit some data over others. All right. Again, that's something that we'll probably want to pursue. Okay. Uh, now, I know it's hard because this is a political issue as opposed to a computing issue, right? But which is actually, by the way, why I would not have brought up this topic this early in the class. Is just you guys brought it, so I want to follow up with that. Okay. Um, but um, but really, who do you think is benefits directly if we mandate net neutrality, which at this point we understand to mean you cannot prioritize one set of data over another. You cannot charge extra for one set of data over another. Okay, so who benefits the most? It serves the providers. Okay, the cable companies greed on money exclusively. Okay, you think ISPs benefit from this? Okay, right. Um, why do we think ISPs benefit from this? Joe, do you want to follow up on that or somebody else? ISPs want the money that they'll charge. Oh, I see. Okay. So maybe this is what Joel had in mind. They want the money that they'll charge other companies to transmit their specific type of data. I think that's true, but I think that's not net neutrality, but the opposite of it. If you don't have net neutrality, right, then you don't have to treat all data through equally. Then you can go to HBO and say, hey, your data costs, you know, 10 times what that other guy's data cost. Because let's be honest, people want to see your films, but they don't really want to see that other person's films. So, that might happen. Okay. Um, right. Smaller ISPs don't have competition from bigger ISPs. I think you can make that case for data providers too. If you make your own movies and try to stream them, then not having to compete with Netflix would be useful, right? So yeah, there's that. Yeah, I do not know the current status of net neutrality. I do know that it's under review at uh, the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, and they're the ones that are eventually going to decide. Okay, so without net neutrality, the government could cut access to illegal content, and okay, all right, all right. So there aren't necessarily right and wrong answers to this. What I want to see is I want to see you guys develop the ability to kind of think critically about the issues. Um, okay. Talking about onion routers, I don't want to open up that kind of worms almost literally today, but the but that's true, right? I mean, that's certainly a factor. It would be a different kind of data that you could against, and so that could be an effect. Very good. Okay, very good for bringing that up. Now, excuse me. So we do have kind of a few things available out there, right? Let me tell you about somebody who really, really, really likes net neutrality. And I don't know if this changes your perception or not, okay? But one of the biggest proponents of net neutrality is Netflix, okay? And I don't know what the current number is, so I am going to try to look that up. So percent of internet traffic, Netflix, okay? Just out of curiosity. And I don't know whether this number is accurate or not, right? This is just what Google told me, so it's not something that I'm going to flat out believe. But it says 37% is due to Netflix. That's an awful lot of traffic, right? You know, it's so if I am the person that owns the cables that transmit the data on the internet, I might go to Netflix and say, hey, you're actually using up, almost 40% of my capacity. That costs me X amount of dollars per year. I think you should pay me 50% of X. Okay. And why not, right? At least try, right? See if I can get away with it. Okay. So that right there is the challenge between the pro net neutrality, Netflix, right? I mean, there's a winner, and you guys identified that earlier. Remember, somebody said producers, right? Producers benefit, okay? And then who loses if we don't have, or rather, who loses if we have net neutrality? And I could say that those are the people that own the pipes that carry the internet, right? Own the cables, because they would like to charge for those cables. That includes ISPs. That also includes people on the back end. Okay, so the quote backbone of the internet. So yeah, they would like to see net neutrality go away because they want to charge extra for different people, right? Netflix stands a lot to lose if they don't pay to play, right? And it gets even more interesting because, for example, Warner Brothers could buy one of the backbone servers and then say, oh, Warner Brothers data goes through easily, but not Netflix's, right? And at least in Canada, I can't remember what company it was. I'm going to claim that it was, shoot, I just got to remember. I mean, I know that AT&T owns DirecTV. So, if you have an AT&T phone, you might be able to stream DirecTV more easily. And that's precisely the kind of thing that Canada said no to. So even though it's better for consumers in the sense that if you have their phone, then you can stream unlimited that one provider, but not others, right? At least you can stream one unlimited. Canadian court said, no, sorry, you can't give that service unless you let him stream unlimited anybody, not just from the provider you happen to own. So the net result is that they don't let you stream unlimited anymore, period, right? So the consumers actually lost, even though you would think that they're the ones that would benefit. Okay. So anyway, so those are the kind of players that care deeply about this. Can anybody tell me kind of a deeper impact if, say, net neutrality succeeds, or, it becomes the law of the land, or conversely, it doesn't become the law of the land, so that ISPs can charge differentially? And I don't mean just immediately, but just kind of a trail of ideas to come to a group of people that's deeply affected. What would you think? Well, first of all, can we even identify a group of people that might be honestly affected by this? Okay. I'm willing to run with it. Why? Why are they particularly affected by net neutrality or the lack thereof? Like I said, it's not about right answers. It's about how do we think to get to the right answers. Right. So I think it's true that smaller companies would be affected because the bigger ones could pay and lock the smaller companies out, right? Netflix basically set it up so that nobody could ever build a competitor to them. And Hayden's point is also true. What if all these companies could just disappear? Because if you actually charge them the cost of carrying all that data through, they may not be able to afford it. It may actually be too expensive, right? And that's kind of interesting because you could argue, well, then they shouldn't exist, right? Their business model is somebody else pays my costs and I collect the money. That's a great business model, right? But everybody loses. Online gaming companies, how come? And by the way, you can unmute yourself if you want to use the microphone, if you have a microphone. Okay, join us. Okay, thanks for letting me know. So the answer why gaming companies, because they require a lot of bandwidth. Okay. Yes, Hayden, that is absolutely true. Comcast customers, for example, wouldn't get Netflix because Netflix didn't pay Comcast extra. That's precisely the net neutrality issue. Would only be beneficial to large companies, possibly. Okay. All right. Okay. So I'm gonna leave it there. Okay. But I want you to keep thinking about this. In particular, I know it's really hard, but I want you to try to find a group of people that are more affected by this than others. Okay. So some of the people that you seem to have identified are small companies, right? It would be nice if you could broaden that even more, because, for example, you could say that will actually stifle innovation in the internet because small companies can't come in. I heard somebody say, "Oh, even YouTube and Amazon and Google and so on, even they were small ones, right?" So you could actually say, without net neutrality, we won't be able to get a Facebook off the ground, a Google off the ground, and so on, and that would have a societal effect or whatever. So yeah, that's something to consider, right? And I'm going to keep pushing on this because that's part of what the College Board wants you to be able to do, is to kind of think about the impact of computing and try to go beyond the 30-second soundbite and actually see who really is affected and who really pays for this, so to speak. All right? Okay, any questions at all about this? Okay, so I'm going to give you a name, and I want to see if any of you have heard of this name. It is Reality Winner. Okay, that is an honest to goodness name. I do not know what her parents were thinking when they named her that. Okay, but that's her name, Reality Winner. Anybody heard of poor Miss Winner? Alien? I don't think so. No. Okay. Well, she's a very interesting person. Let me try a different name. Let's see if you heard of this one. Chelsea Manning. Have you heard of that? Anybody? Okay. Yeah. A little bit more famous. Chelsea's more famous. Yeah, there you go. At least you've heard the name. You can't quite place it. That's okay. Absolutely. Hunter knows exactly who it is. You have her address? It's the internet. I'm probably a Google search away from finding it. Okay, so I want to tell you about Reality Winner, and then I'll just casually mention Chelsea so that you know who we're talking about too. So Reality Winner actually worked for the military, okay, and I believe it was the Navy. I could be wrong on that, okay, and I want to come back to that. But anyway, she worked for the military, and she was actually pretty horrified at some of the things that the government was doing. I believe, although I could be wrong on this again, I believe that it was because she's not a supporter of Trump and didn't like where Trump was taking the direction of the Defense Department. Okay, so she decided that the best way to deal with that is to let people know about some of the things that were happening, right? So she printed them in her office. This is a military office. So she printed some files and then leaked them to the press. Okay. This was an embarrassment to the government, right? Because there were some things in there that were not intended for people like you and me to read, okay? But besides that, something really interesting happened. She was arrested within 24 hours, okay? And if you think about that, it's pretty impressive, right? I mean, who knew that that law enforcement was that efficient, right? I mean, here's a crime committed, and regardless of your political spectrum, it's a crime. I mean, you work for the military, you're not supposed to leak secret military documents, right? And that's something that you sign. You don't say you're not going to do this. But she decided, conscientious objection, whatever. She was going to go ahead and do it. She commits a crime, and boom, 24 hours, arrested. I mean, that's really, really quick. So can anybody even guess why they found her so quickly? And just to be clear, she didn't just sign it at the bottom, love reality, right? I mean, that would give it away, but it wasn't that easy, okay? She tried to hide her tracks.
Do they track her IP address or something?
That is a really good guess, okay? But no. And in fact, remember, it's a printout. She actually leaked a printout. I assume she put it in an envelope and mailed it to the press, okay? So peer-to-peer networking is another good guess. But again, no, this is a printout, right? This is just a whole bunch of 8.5 by 11 papers. They kept track of what she was printed, maybe. Did they get a warrant to search her devices? Eventually, yes, okay. But no, nobody told on her, okay. So yeah, this is great. We have a mystery going. Okay. Now, let me tell you the answer, because you won't believe it. The answer is that every printer, or I hate to use the word every, but just about, okay, every printer actually leaves a trace on what you print, okay? So if you look at the printout and you read it, you see the words, and let's say that you print in black and white, right? So you have a white background and you see letters on black. That's all you see. But if you could see more carefully, you will notice that there are really tiny yellow dots, okay, in the page somewhere, right? And those yellow dots actually say the serial number of the printer that printed this, okay? How many of you knew that was the case? You did. Way to go, Keith. Who else? You didn't? That's all right. Two for no. We're up to 30% of you did. Okay, 25, 20. Okay. So, well, 2. Oh, shoot. Now I can't do the percentages in my head anymore. But certainly somewhere around 10%. Okay. I think that, okay, 15%. That's about what we would have here at the university, okay? Right. Some people would know about it because, just came across it. Most people wouldn't, because it's not something that you think about all the time, right? But actually, that's why they found her so quickly. They got that. They had the serial number of the printer. She works at a federal building, right? I mean, she works for the military. They actually know every single printer, right? So they were able to find, oh, this printer is in this location. Awesome. So who is around that location? And reality was seated around that location. So they basically narrowed it down to a very select few, after which the kinds of other ideas that you were talking about, like IP addresses and so on, were then used to narrow it down. If she had used somebody else's printer, that would have certainly made it harder, right? Okay. So yeah, if she had used somebody else's printer, then maybe it should be okay. Ironically, if she had been able to just put the files into her own USB drive, right, and then print it from home, she probably would have been okay, right? If they had suspected her, subpoenaed, gotten a warrant for her printer, then she'd be nailed. But they would have to do a lot of that to suspect her and get probable cause before they got access to it, right? So she might have gotten away with it. But anyway, if you take a look in the book, chapter 2, okay, so actually before the section that I asked you to read, one of the things that it talks about are what are known as fingerprints and footprints, and this is one heck of metaphor, okay? Because the idea is that footprints are traces that you leave that somebody can use to track down the guilty party, right? And footprints you're aware of, right? If you walk in mud, you can see behind you and go, yep, I'm leaving a trail. Somebody's following me. They know where I am, right? Okay. And a lot of times we just don't care about that, right? We leave a trail deliberately. It's just not worth the hassle to cover it, right? And fingerprints are things that you leave behind that somebody can use to track you down, but you're not aware of, okay? You didn't realize that you leave them behind. So here, the yellow dots are precisely fingerprints that were used to find the leaker, okay? Chelsea Manning, for those of you who didn't know about her, she was also in the military, and she sent some information to WikiLeaks that was then used is again, say things about what the government was doing that Chelsea certainly felt needed to be out there. Many people think that Chelsea is a hero. I'm kind of on the fence on that. I kind of feel that anybody who follows his or her conscience, right, is a hero. I really believe in that, right? On the other hand, if you do a leak and that means that some people are in danger of losing their lives, then that's not cool, right? And I do know that it's a crime. So sometimes you do something out of conscience, and then you have to pay the price. And the price for her was to go to jail, right, for quite some time until Obama did pardon her. So she's out now. But anyway, so what ends up happening is in both of those cases, they were actually found because they left fingerprints. That really, really good cybersecurity folks were able to then trace back and go, oh, that's where the leak came from. So it's part of what we learn. Okay. Anyway, I wanted you to know that because I wanted you to think about fingerprints. I wanted you to think about footprints and kind of cybersecurity, cybercrime, just in general. And again, make you aware of that, just the societal impact. Okay, so I'll leave it there. We'll talk more about that later. But the next thing that I want to do, and we have around 45 minutes, is I want to give you time so that you can finish up Unit 1, Lab 3. Okay, let's try to get that assignment going. If you finish before time is up, which is great, if that happens, then I want you to go back and look at some of the, if you have time or to dig deeper and follow them, okay? Because there's some really, really cool activities in there that we just don't have the time to do all of them in class. Next week, we'll move on to some other labs, okay? All right, so I'll set you off to do that. If you have questions, go ahead and ask. And other than that, I'll pause the recording so that the folks that are logging in after this time don't just look at us looking at each other on screen. All right.